It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebesta. I'm the co-founder of Retire Repurposed alongside Ben Tejas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you're listening to us on the radio. Maybe you found us online. Regardless how you found us, go to iTunes, find our podcast, click subscribe, and better yet, leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career 30, 40, 50 plus years, then shutting it off without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we start a brand new series on optimizing retirement. Today, we cover the time, money, health conundrum. The ability for you to enjoy your life at any age is a combination of these three assets. Understanding this balance is important for people at any age, but especially for those in retirement or approaching retirement. In this podcast, Ben explains how the natural decline of health with age should create a sense of urgency to optimize your life for experiences today and not live for someday in retirement. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, we are back and we are going to start a brand new series today called Optimizing Retirement. We're going to start with the time, money, health conundrum today. And this is going to be a fabulous show. We're so thankful that you're tuning in here today. Before we get started, though, I just want to remind you we have a brand new Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Join a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. Look for more tips on living repurposed, Facebook Lives, Q&A sessions with Ben and myself. Go to facebook.com and search Becoming Repurposed to join this growing community of people today. Ben Tejas joins me on the show here today, and last week on the show, Ben, we talked about this idea of the ant and the grasshopper, and this is going to be a great segue into today's show. But this old childhood fable of the ant and the grasshopper. You have the ant who was the saver. He worked through the summer. He stored up food. And you have the grasshopper who was just kind of living for the day. And at the end, he runs out of food when it comes time to winter. And then the fable ends. And the ant is kind of heralded as the hero of that story. But we talked about last week how that's not exactly the case.
Yeah, the thing is who did it right? And I'm not sure either of them did, but I think both of them had things that if and listening to the story, both of them did things that were, I think in the end, important to remember. So I've had fun with this discussion. I think if you've listened to that podcast and you're thinking about it, you relate to one or the other. That in you tend to go to one side or the other, and I think that podcast can really help some people just start thinking deeper about which one they relate with, and then maybe some changes in their life right now they need to make.
We tied it to this idea of people preparing for retirement, and you almost said if you tend to be more like the ant, a little bit more conservative, a little more frugal, live below your means, live in a someday type of mentality, that people end up going into retirement over saving. And that's almost kind of a problem in itself, which kind of goes against conventional wisdom, but that's kind of the way that you framed it last week.
Yeah, if you live for someday and someday doesn't ever come, that's a problem. And I think when we help people and you can help them get past the idea of life deferral, defer and save and be like the ant, but never stop, living just so that someday you can do that. And that goes to all areas of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. We said how last week, whether you were the ant or the grasshopper, it was a suboptimal way to look at life. And again, that's why we want to spend the next couple of shows, including today's show, on really trying to optimize the best life for you at this time. And just right off the bat, we're calling this mini-series Optimizing Retirement. That's kind of an oxymoron because really, to optimize your retirement, you need to be optimizing your life now. So we're not just talking to retirees today at all.
Yeah, super important for retirees to be thinking of this, obviously, because you're getting later on in life. So you're starting to wonder, I don't have that much time left potentially. But I think at every age, if you can optimize and you can, make the most of your life, that's exactly where we want to be.
We're calling today's show the Time, Money, Health Conundrum, and we're going to talk about these specific factors in detail and how they affect different people at different ages so you can live, again, a more optimal life. The idea for this show actually started a couple of weeks ago, and this is a true story. I was out just kind of hanging out, working out in the garage or something with my son who's 11, and he asked a very, I would say, intelligent question for an 11-year-old. He said, "Daddy, what's the best age? What's the best age to grow up in?" And I didn't exactly understand what he was talking about. He's like, "Is it like your 50s?" And I thought he meant like the 1950s. It's like what
Yeah.
Like what period in time was the best to grow up? He goes, "No, Daddy, like what's the best age? Like what's the best? Like is it when you're young or you're old?" And I was like, that's a great question to ask. And so the answer that I gave him is kind of the crux of today's show. And basically what I told him is every single stage of life has different advantages and different disadvantages. So really to answer that question, it's kind of subjective, A, but B, it depends on kind of where you have the combination of three really important factors: time, money, and health. Ben, where do you want to start with this one, trying to break these down?
Well, I think, I've had the chance to walk with many retirees over the years. And again, your son is asking a question there that we all struggle with, that we all kind of think through, because we know that, deep down we want to be happy, we want to be fulfilled, we want to be, enjoying our life. But how do you get there, right? And exactly when is life the best? My initial answer was, well, right now, right now, today is the best age to be. But that's really an answer that, I think everybody kind of likes to say that. Yeah. But deep down, we know that it depends on these three things: your time, money, and health.
Okay, so let's break some of these down. And again, your ability to enjoy life is kind of what we're talking about here. So let's first talk about time. What do you mean when we say time?
What I'm specifically talking about is not necessarily longevity of how long you have to live yet, but free time, really margin. We've talked about margin on the show before. It's space in our life to do the things that we want to do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of having the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to ditch out of work early. We want to spend another day on vacation. We want to have a little bit more family time tonight. I think it's the ability to be able to do that is kind of what we're talking about here. And I think that's an important point. We're not talking longevity. That's a whole nother story, by the way, but that's not what we're talking about here. What about money?
So when it comes to money, we're talking about disposable income, available funds. We know, Jared, that money doesn't buy happiness, but I think a lack of money and a lack of the ability to do experiences can cause a lot of problems. In the book Repurposed, I had an entire chapter dedicated to this idea. The title of it was "Money Doesn't Buy Happiness, but Pensions Do." The whole idea was if you had consistent income, you could experience things, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and you may be able to lump your net worth into that, but I think it's more on a tactical level. You're talking about that daily income to have, to just be able to, again, not be happy, but buy experiences and have that life. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, Jared, studies show that, once your basic needs are met, right, having a little bit of extra so you can buy experiences, because many of the experiences, not all, but many experiences in life do take some capital to make happen.
100%. Now let's talk about health. What are we talking about here?
Well, I think we're talking about your overall health more as it relates to your ability to see and do things, okay? So many times as we age, right, our health goes down. That's what we're talking about, not being able to do the things we want to do. Yeah. We talked about life deferral on last show. Many times people get in the life deferral mode, and all of a sudden they are like waiting to do this experience or that experience. By the time they actually get there, it's not as good because their health isn't as good.
You could talk about energy levels. You could maybe even talk about your mental health. We have a chiropractor friend who says, you know what, older folks, they won't come into my office, but as soon as the pain starts to affect their daily life, bam, that's when it starts becoming a problem. So again, yes, we're talking about overall health, but really your health kind of preventing you from being able to live life. That's what we're talking about here. So let's break down different ages and where you have kind of the combination of these three. Let's talk about young people. And what when we say young people, what ages, Ben, in your mind are we talking about?
Well, the age that I think we're just past, Jared, these people in their 20s and 30s, right? They're just kind of getting out of school or just getting going with young families. I think the time is there. They have the time,
yep.
But I think lots of health, but the financial side is missing.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I can remember when I was starting my TV career in my 20s, all I had was time. And it was interesting because I had friends that were our age now, like a little older in their 40s, and they would talk about how they just don't have time, and all I had was time, but I didn't have any money. But I also had a lot of health because I was a college basketball player several years before, so I had plenty of energy, had plenty of health, but had a very severe lack of money, and that's, I think, probably typical for a lot of people in that age bracket. Then you start to get a little bit older, probably low to mid 30s into your 40s. Now you're kind of reaching this middle age, and those folks have a different set of problems.
Yeah, that's you and I, right? I mean, we talk about this a lot just as we visit, and I think we have financial ability. We also have our health yet, but I think what we don't have is time.
Yep.
And I think, I'm dealing with this right now. I got so many things that I want to do, and the time to do them, I'm running out.
Yep.
They're just, and I'm not talking longevity again.
Right.
I'm talking about specifically in my day. I don't have the margin to do things. So right now, just yesterday, both of my daughters actually asked me to go on daddy-daughter dates. It's been a little while, and separately. And I'm like, where can I do this right now? Because I've got literally these two girls, which
right.
I will do this, but I have to find time and margin to do those things.
I find myself really kind of playing an engineer with my time. We'll have just an hour maybe after supper, and I'll say, guys, how can we best use this hour? And I think that's just a natural progression of my personality. I tend to think and look in those terms of kind of black and white. But I think it's because, you're strapped for time. And I think it's really easy to see that your time actually looks like a giant U-curve over the course of your life. You start out with a lot of time, and then it dips in the middle part of your life. Why? Well, you're busy with a career. You're busy with stuff. Your kids are getting older. They're in activities. And then as you start to go into empty nesters, your free time actually starts to come back. So let's talk about now kind of, I don't want to talk about retirees, but maybe, early Gen Xers, kind of that, 50, 60 and beyond. What's their combination look like?
Well, we know that they have more wealth. Typically, wealth peaks somewhere in those ages, right? Yep. So they have the money, and some of them are retired or getting close to retirement, but they're empty nesters, so the kids are out of the house. You have more time.
Yeah.
And what we tend to see is what starts to be missing a little bit is your health.
Yeah.
So we know as you age, you don't get healthier typically, and that's the thing that, of course, we're missing in those years.
Yep, 100%. And again, you and I, Ben, we're about the same age, and we've talked about this and joked about this. There is a noticeable thing that starts to happen once you get into your 40s. There is just, whether you like it or not, there's a natural digression of your health. I think you have some ability to slow that down, by eating right, working out, staying active. But at the end of the day, Ben, you and I are going to be less healthy in 10 or 20 years than what we are right now, regardless of what we do today to prevent that.
Yeah, I mean, if I go on a bike ride or like a really hard bike ride, which I like to do, and I've prepared for that, and I'm 20 years younger than I am today, I could have done a lot more with the same level of preparedness versus today. Things just don't work as well, regardless of how hard I work on preparing myself.
100%. I used to play college basketball, so I'm 20 years removed from playing college basketball, where you could literally run for days. I look about the same. I'm the same weight and probably body mass index as I was. But if I played basketball with a bunch of kids right now for half an hour, I wouldn't be able to walk for, for 3 days. It's not because my health has digressed that much. It's just I'm getting older. My daughter, she's doing handstands in the living room last night. She's like, Daddy, can you do one of these? And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I'm 40, for crying out loud. It's not that I'm out of shape. They're just older. That's just the way it is. So again, that's a key point you have to listen to. That is one of the things that you retirees and pre-retirees need to understand. Whether you like it or not, your health is going to go down. And so this idea of optimization really comes into play for you folks. Ben, which one is most important?
Yeah, Jared, I would say health. I've had the ability in over 20 years working with retirees and meeting with people. When your health starts to go down, the other two are very important. Mm-hmm. But when your health changes, it dramatically changes the other two as well. So I'm going to say health.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. So how do you optimize each phase of life? The general theory here is that you want to use the two that you have most of to create more of the one that you're lacking, because in every phase you're probably lacking one, maybe two of these. So let's talk about the young folks, the 20s and early 30s. You could theorize that that's a great time to spend your time and your energy to try to create more money or more wealth. That's exactly what a lot of people do. That's where you're really building your career. You don't probably have a family at that point. And so you're using the resources that you have to try to create a little bit more disposable income for, the years ahead. Find a job, a career, build a business.
Well, I think first of all, those younger folks realize that you do have so much time,
right,
and you have your health, and maybe I'm gonna say this, I'd maybe be a little bit less worried about saving tons of money for the future.
That's a good point.
And we know that it's important to save. We know, but again, getting back to life deferral, there are experiences that you can have right now as a young person that you will never be able to have again.
Yeah.
So maybe being mindful of that and understanding that, I need to be putting some money away, but I need to really maximize the two that I have.
Yeah, good point. Middle ages, what should we be doing?
I think if we can do things specifically to free up time, we need to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I love yard work, and we both live on hobby farms, and there are times when even though I love doing some stuff, it does take me away from my family, which I know is most important. So although it's very hard to do, have somebody do those things for you. Use some of that money that you have extra of to free up more time and give yourself bandwidth and margin to do the things that you know are most important.
If you're in your 20s, don't have a family, and you spend 6 hours mowing, not a big deal. But if you're in your 40s, have young kids, spend 6 hours mowing, now that's suboptimal, unless you really enjoy it and the kids can involve it. But I think folks listening, you get what we're trying to say here. It would be less optimal to actually go out and do it rather than just pay somebody to do it, because you also have the resources. Bottom line is, though, this is the time, especially for folks listening to this that have young kids or kids in general. This is now the time to invest in those resources, and your mind shift needs to change a little bit from when you were in your 20s.
Yeah, Jared, this is the time I think you need to be focusing on, spending some of that money. You have to invest in experiences with your family. So many times we forget that a very, very valuable thing when we experience things younger in life are the memories that come from those experiences we talked about last week's show.
Yep.
Really, really important to be doing those things, because you can't get that time back. Money, right? You can get that back, but time with your family and those experiences, you can't.
When Beckham asked me that question, my 11-year-old son, I said, actually, son, I think, in my opinion, right now for me is the most optimal time in my life, because I've made some money. I still have my health. My time is down, but I can leverage that in other ways, and I can leverage that to have wonderful experiences with you kids. And so, again, everybody's opinion on this is a little bit different, but I would almost say that 40 to 50-year-old range is probably one of the most optimal times. Now, that's going to go against traditional retirement planning, because that says, someday is when it's going to be most optimal, and that's not the case.
So why are we doing this? Why are we telling people day after day that those are the years we got to sock the most money away? You got to be saving the most, because I can see that in my own life. It's like, if I do follow conventional wisdom and I spend these middle years, just saving as much as possible and preparing for the absolute worst scenario, I know I am missing out on things with my family. I know I'm missing out on that. Unfortunately, many times we're doing this because we're just stuck doing what everybody else is doing. I see that all the time. People are just, I'm just doing my job, and I'm putting more money away. I'm also getting a little bit bigger house. I'm getting a little bit better car. I'm getting a little bit whatever, fill in the blank for you. We chase these things with our financial resources that should be used right now to experience. They should be used to experience these great things with our families.
Again, everything that you just mentioned, there's nothing wrong with those things, but it might be suboptimal depending on your situation. Let's talk about some of the older folks, maybe the 55 and beyond into retirement years. Their biggest thing lacking at that point is health, because it's starting to decline naturally no matter what. Now, to spend more of your time and your money to get better health, that's a conundrum in itself, because if you haven't done that prior to retirement age, it might be a little too late. And this is the tragedy in retirement, because you save for someday and then you finally get there and then you never get a chance to experience it because your health is now to a point where you either can't or you don't want to.
Yeah, you get to that point in life where you think you've arrived to this point, and you've gotten to that spot where you planned on doing all these things, and then your health is not as good. You and I talk about this a lot, but we, being in the retirement planning business, we look at what are people, if you just Google the word retirement, what comes up?
Yeah.
You and I both know it comes up this nice old couple sitting on the beach. Many times they're holding a bottle of wine. Right? They're holding a glass of wine and they're just loving life. And unfortunately, we have seen many times where that exact scenario doesn't actually happen, because once they get there, they don't even want that, right?
Well, again, I came in to the office one morning last week and I said, Ben, how many of the retirees that you've worked with have actually done this? And what did you say?
None.
0. And I found that very fascinating. What's interesting is that is the quintessential photo that is used in retirement marketing to people our age. And I think the reason why it's used is because that's what we want. We want to sit on the beach and snorkel in Tahiti, because we're trying, we're usually overworked, we
got no time.
We got no time. And so that's what we want. And unfortunately, we put this on a pedestal. And then by the time you get there, you don't even want to do those things. And if you want to, you may not have the health to do it. And that's the tragedy in a suboptimal life.
And that's why we want to make sure at every one of these age groups that we're optimizing our life. We're being very careful to both recognize what we don't have in those moments, and make the most of what we do have, right? And make decisions and changes that allows us to optimize every single day. And before the show, we were talking about this, and I think the one thing we're missing, Jared, in this show, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts on these similar ideas, and the one thing they're missing too, many times, if they come at this thing from a secular standpoint, is they miss the understanding that above and beyond all of this, we are created to be in relationship with God. I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago, and these guys had all three of those things in a very, very high level. They had lots of time, they had lots of money, and they had great health. And they were like, it's almost like something's missing. Have you thought about that?
That's what they said.
Yeah, they actually said that. I said, well, yeah, something's missing. You were created to live with your Creator. You were created to be in relationship with God, who has created you. So I think when you miss that, and it doesn't matter how much time, money, health, if you miss those three in no relationship, I think you're really going to be still searching for something.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation about optimizing retirement. And like we said in the podcast, to truly optimize retirement, you must optimize your life today. And that goes for everyone, no matter your age. Going back to the question my son asked me, when is the best time in life? Is it your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? And the real answer is right now. Today is the day. You can't change the past, and God's word says don't worry about the future. There are opportunities for experiences today that you can only have right now. That's how you optimize retirement. Want to get this conversation started on how to optimize your life and retirement? There's a way I can help, and it's absolutely free. Here's what I want you to do. Go to our website, retirerepurpose.com, and click on Breakthrough Call. It's right at the top of the page. And during this call, we're going to get crystal clear on 3 things. What does your dream life in retirement look like? What are life experiences you want to have right now? And we're going to talk about ways you can start experiencing them right now. One more time, to schedule this call, go to retirerepurpose.com and click on Breakthrough Call to begin your repurposed journey today. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.